Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be speaking about my favorite non-fiction books. Now I've made a lot of different videos on my favorite book categories, like my favorite kids and YA books and my favorite books in general, but I've realized that I never actually made a video speaking about my favorite non-fiction books, and this is a category of book I really enjoy reading. So today let's speak about non-fiction books. I think this is actually the first time I'm filming one of these favorite book videos where I don't actually have an enormous stack of books sitting next to me threatening to topple over and destroy everything. Mostly because a lot of these books I borrowed from the library or I read in audiobook version. There's going to be a teeny tiny bit of crossover here if you've seen my favorite books video, because some of the books on that list are also on this list. However, in my favorite books video I don't really go in depth into the non-fiction books I like. So I'm sorry if you've already seen that video and you're coming to this one and you think there's a bit of repetition. But yeah, without further ado, let's jump into the video and I'm going to start speaking about my favorite non-fiction books. Number one is A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. Now I think this is probably my favorite non-fiction book of all time. This is an extended essay. I have it on my Kindle and I reread it 2 or 3 times a year. It is the most beautifully written thing and I love it to pieces. Pretty much A Room of One's Own is Virginia Woolf's essay meditation on what it takes to be a writer and what is needed to be a writer. So pretty much looks at the ways that it's difficult for women specifically to be writers in the early 20th century. It's very insightful. As I said, it's beautifully written. The ideas that it goes through are really interesting, and it's just all around a joyful thing to read. It's still a beautiful, brilliant read. It's very ahead of its time, and it's just one of my favorite things ever, hence why I reread it 2 or 3 times a year. It's just amazing and I love it. Number 2 is a book that I read recently, and it's also a book that I haven't technically finished yet, but I will have finished by the time this video goes up, and I know that it's one of my favorite books. And that book is Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind, and the author's name is Yuval Noah Harari. I had heard a lot of hype about this book and I had heard that it was really good. I'd seen lots of people reading it, and I love history and I love natural history and I find all that stuff really interesting. I was blown away by how much I loved this book though. The ideas that this book covered, from religion to commerce to politics to evolution, it was the most concise and interesting version of the human history that could have possibly be written. He did such an amazing job at just taking all of the bits that were the most interesting and fashioning them together. There's not a dull moment in this book, despite it covering such a massive ground. So specifically the evolution of the human race and where we came from, what we did, how we grew, all of that kind of stuff. I have learned so much from this book and it is really insightful. I cannot recommend it enough. Definitely a 5-star book, and I would like everyone to read it because you learn so much about our species and how we developed and where we came from and how the world is the way it is, why we have money, why we have religion, all of this stuff. It's very interesting. Book number 3 is The Invention of Angela Carter by Edmund Gordon. This is the first non-fiction book that I've actually cried while reading. A lot of you guys know that I love Angela Carter. She's the author who wrote The Bloody Chamber, The Magic Toy Shop, Night to the Circus, a boatload of beautiful, gothic, magical, just amazing books. And Angela Carter had a very interesting life, and she died really young. She died when she was 50 or something like that from lung cancer. So pretty much it just goes over her life and the things that influenced her, growing up in South London, when she lived in Japan, when she lived in Adelaide, Australia. It's all around a really good book and I love it. The 4th one is On Writing by Stephen King. Now I haven't actually read much Stephen King, in terms of his fiction I haven't read very much. I am following his Twitter, which is endlessly interesting, but I haven't read a lot of Stephen King. I have, however, read On Writing, and it's one of my favorite memoirs about writing ever. It gives a really, really interesting look to his experience of being a writer. It's really, really brilliantly written. It's very engaging to read, and all around it's just a really, really good book. I think I borrowed it in my first year of university from the university library. Yeah, if you're interested in writing, if you're interested in Stephen King, if you just want to read about the life of a writer, On Writing is a really, really good place to start. It speaks about his drug addiction. It speaks about him, he got into a car accident around the time that he was actually writing the book and how he healed. All around just really, really brilliant read, and I loved reading it. Number 4 is A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking. Now, I am a pretty big Stephen Hawking fan. I think he's a super duper cool person. But yeah, pretty much you can guess what this book is about. It is about the history of time, and obviously compared to Sapiens, this is from a lot more of a scientific perspective. Admittedly, this book is a lot more dry than Sapiens is. It's really interesting to read about the history of the universe in more of a micro sense, in that it's giving you a lot of detail about how things work. Incredibly informative. It's not difficult to read if you don't have a background in science. Like, it's written for mass market, it's written for everyone. And it's just really, really interesting. I love space and I love black holes and I love learning about things like this. So this is a really brilliant book. The next one is The Miracle of Mindfulness by Thich Nhat Hanh. I read this when I was in Japan, I think. I have a very strong memory of reading this on the train to work. And I read it on my Kindle. So again, I don't have a physical copy of it. But this book, I tried really hard to get into this book the first time and I wasn't ready for it yet, but then I came back to it a few months later and it was just absolutely brilliant. This book is exactly what it says on the tin. It's about mindfulness. So pretty much the process of, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you think that things are going too quickly, if you can't concentrate on things, you focus on something very, very specific. So like if you're sitting in, say you're sitting on the ground in your bedroom and you just start focusing on like the way the floor feels, or all the sounds you can hear, stuff like that. You just focus on very, very minute senses, and it's actually very, very therapeutic. So this book taught me a lot about mindfulness, and it's been really useful to me personally, because mindfulness can be really, really important to help with stress and to help feel like you're slowing things down when they're going too quickly. It showed me a very different perspective on how to think about things. Second to last book is The Cambridge Companion to Fantasy Literature. Now, I'm a massive fan of all the Cambridge Companion books. I have the Cambridge Companion to Shakespeare. I also have the Cambridge Companion to, I think, something else. I have a few, like I've got a few that I have like in digital version because of university, but this is the Cambridge Companion to Fantasy. It is so excellent because every single chapter is written by a different scholar in this field. Honestly, anyone can read this book. It's really, really good. It's not too academic, but it has enough academic stuff in there so that if you were using it for an assignment, you could absolutely use it. I used this endlessly for my postgraduate study because my area that I was studying was fantasy literature, and this was just very insightful. It covers everything from Tolkien to Angela Carter to Haruki Murakami and beyond. It's a really, really good book if you're interested in fantasy lit, or if you're interested in literature in general. And it's brilliant and I love it, and I recommend you guys check it out if you like that sort of stuff. And then the last one is the Literary Theory Handbook. Now this book is really well loved and well used. I have read this back to front. If you're not studying an English degree, you're probably not gonna like this book. You're probably gonna think it's stupidly boring, but I love this textbook. Pretty much I didn't find out about any of this stuff until I started doing postgrad, so I think this is more of a postgrad level. But if you want to get ahead at your undergrad, by all means pick up this book. Essentially, it just goes over literary theory from like several hundred years ago until now, when literary theory began. I have learnt about a lot of stuff from this book, and it's been very, very insightful. It's a resource that I can constantly go back and forward to and learn lots of stuff from, and it was just really, really instrumental to my postgrad. And learning, and it's just an excellent resource for people who are interested in studying literature, and especially people who are doing research in literature. So love this book, really brilliant, incredibly informative. It covers so much space in like not an enormous book, and all around just a really good book, and I really liked it. So yeah, that was the last one. Thank you guys so very much for watching. Please give me your recommendations. If you guys have favorite nonfiction books, please tell me in the comments down below. I especially love history, so if you know any books that are similar to Sapiens, I would love to hear about them, because I want to read more history books. I want to read more about natural history. Also books about sciences. I'd love to read more about physics and astronomy. And yeah, thank you guys so very much for watching. Take care, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.